The Implement Findings part of the retirement planning series explores how the results from part 1, 2, and 3 are used to develop your retirement plan. At a high level, we're using the insights that we learned from our analysis to determine the retirement planning steps that we should take. We're going to be exploring 4 insights from our case study: retirement options, stock market risk, retirement structure, and projected tax brackets. In retirement, just as in your working years, you'll be faced with some big decisions. You may be deciding if now is a good time to retire, or you may already be retired and you're deciding whether to help your adult children with the cost of a wedding or perhaps a home purchase. Before you can make these decisions, you need to know what they mean for your retirement. When we consider the sample situation, it's obvious that both Mary working part-time and their decision to downsize would increase the money that's available to them in retirement. But this is very vague and not particularly helpful to the samples when it comes to making decisions about their retirement. So from our analysis, we can look at what these decisions mean and what impact they would have. Our base assumptions are for Mary to work part-time and the samples to downsize. We project this would allow them to achieve their 2 additional spending goals and afford their desired retirement lifestyle, plus a bit more if we're looking at their projected spending limit. Next, we can isolate the impact of Mary deciding not to work part-time. The samples would still be able to achieve their desired retirement lifestyle of $90,000 a year, but would be giving up on 3 years of the extra travel, and providing gifts to their grandchildren would not be possible. If we isolate the impact of the samples not downsizing or borrowing against their home, the samples would need to reduce their spending slightly and forego the additional spending for extra travel and gifts. We can also see the impact of no part-time work for Mary and no downsizing. In this scenario, the samples would need to make a more significant cut to their retirement spending and give up on the 2 additional spending goals. So armed with this information, the samples can make their retirement plans knowing what each option means for their retirement and then deciding what to do based on whatever is most important to them. The volatility of the stock market can result in retirees outliving their retirement savings, even though their investments earn the average annual return that they expected. This is known as sequence of returns risk and is due to the impact that the ups and downs of the stock market have on a portfolio when there are withdrawals. This is of course the case in retirement. When we assess the risks to the sample's retirement in part 3, we identified sequence of returns as the greatest cause for concern. So in part 3, we run 10 retirement simulations for the samples. Each simulation arrived at the 6% average annual return assumption, but through a randomized sequence of investment returns. So we found that in 40% of these simulations, there was unfavorable market timing, and that resulted in the samples running out of money before the end of their retirement. If the samples don't want their retirement decided by stock market volatility, they'll need to be proactive and create a retirement income strategy to protect themselves from this risk. While implementing portfolio management strategies is outside of the scope of this presentation, I do want to stress one of the most important parts: timing. Ideally, a strategy should be put together a few years prior to retiring, but if you're already retired and your investments have been enjoying strong recent performance, then now could be a very ideal time. During your working years, it's typical to only have one source of income, your job. In retirement, you will have a mixture of different income sources that need to be integrated. You'll probably be entitled to some sort of government benefit, like CPP and OAS. You might have a company pension or a government pension, or you may have investment assets such as an RSP or a TFSA. These income sources each come with their own set of characteristics. For example, government pensions and benefits provided by the government give you a guaranteed inflation-adjusted lifetime income, These income sources provide excellent protection against inflation and a longer than expected retirement, but they do not provide you with any payment flexibility, which is really needed for cash flow and tax planning. On the other hand, you have a great deal of flexibility when it comes to your investment accounts, but there's a risk of them depleting over longer retirement. Through the retirement planning process, you're able to evaluate the relative strengths and weaknesses of your retirement situation. You can then rebalance your retirement position to increase the probability of achieving your retirement goals. When we look at the sample's retirement situation, they don't have a large defined benefit pension, they don't have annuities, and instead they will be funding a large portion of their retirement spending by generating an income from their investment accounts. This provides the samples with liquidity and the flexibility that's needed for effective cash flow and tax planning. The downside, however, is that they could run out of money if they overspend or fail to account for inflation. They also need to worry about investment volatility and the risk of a longer than expected retirement. So the samples have an opportunity to rebalance their retirement situation when they decide when to start their CPP and OAS benefits. By delaying the start date to age 70, they will receive a higher benefit late in retirement, but the trade-off would be the need to make up that amount by making higher withdrawals from their investment accounts while they wait for the benefits to start. The starting age that provides John and Mary with the greatest total benefit will ultimately depend on how long they live. If the samples decide not to start CPP at age 65 and instead delay the start date to age 70, they will forego 5 years of benefits. However, at age 70, when they do start receiving CPP, the benefit amount they receive will be 42% higher. So we're going to calculate how long it takes for this higher benefit amount to make up for those 5 years of lost payments. CPP is an inflation-adjusted benefit, and so we will assume payments increase each year by the inflation rate of 2.1% that we've been using. We also need to factor in the time value of money, recognizing that $100 today is worth more to the samples than $100 1 year from now. So we'll be using 6% to adjust for this time value of money, which is the investment return we have assumed for the sample's investment portfolio. And we can see the break-even age is 88. This is before both John's life expectancy of 89 and Mary's life expectancy of 91. However, even if the break-even age came after their life expectancy, it wouldn't necessarily mean an earlier start date would be the best option for them. So more on this in the next slide when we analyze their OAS start date. Okay, so the break-even age for OAS. Very similar calculation as we've just done for CPP, but there's one very noticeable difference. The incentive for delaying OAS is slightly lower than it is for CPP. So delaying CPP from age 65 to 70 increases your monthly benefit by 42%, whereas for OAS, that increases only 36%. This, of course, results in a later break-even age. A break-even age of around 90 means that there's no obvious choice from a statistical standpoint. It's close to both of their life expectancies. However, we want to consider what actually matters to the samples when deciding the best course of action. It will likely have no impact on John and Mary's retirement lifestyle if they pass before the break-even age, and as a result receive slightly less than the amount that they could have. On the other hand, if the samples are blessed with longevity and live to a ripe old age, the upside of receiving a higher amount has the potential to truly benefit the samples, as it will reduce the probability of them outliving their money. During our working years, making contributions to an RRSP is a common way of saving for retirement. Our contributions allow us to defer paying income tax on the amount that we contribute, and instead pay the tax when the funds are eventually withdrawn in retirement, a time that we expect to be in a lower income tax bracket. Somewhere along the way, most people forget this, and instead continue to focus on income tax deferral throughout their retirement years. Unfortunately, as Benjamin Franklin famously said, there are only two guarantees in life: death and taxes. When you turn a blind eye to this reality, you might look at withdrawing additional funds from your RRIF, for example, as a decision to pay tax at 22% and reinvest the net amount, or leave the funds in the account to grow. However, when you have a retirement plan, you'll have a good idea of your income tax brackets throughout retirement, which allows you to see the full picture, which might be that leaving the funds in the account actually means eventually paying income tax at 53.5% when they have to be withdrawn. Let's look at a quick example of how the samples can benefit from deferring income tax. At the end of this year, John plans to be fully retired and Mary plans to be working part-time. We can see how the sample's marginal tax brackets are expected to change once they're retired. John is currently in a 31% marginal tax bracket, and that's expected to drop down to 20% once he's retired. Mary's in a 28% marginal tax bracket, and that is expected to drop down to 20% once she's retired. So John and Mary don't expect to have any excess cash flow for RRSP contributions, but they can still take advantage of tax planning opportunities by shifting money internally within their investment portfolio. If John shifts $1,000 from his TFSA to his RRSP, he'll receive a $310 tax refund based on his current marginal tax rate of 31%. In retirement, he's projected to be in a 20% tax rate, and so he can withdraw the $1,000 and only pay $200 in tax. This is just a quick example to illustrate the process, but it's not hard to see how impactful paying 11% less tax would be when applied to higher dollar amounts. Well, this brings us to the end of our retirement planning series. Everyone's retirement plan will be unique, and yours, of course, will be no different. But I do hope by seeing the process, it's given you a good idea of what goes into a retirement plan. If you're curious how we work with clients, there are a couple of options that we offer. For initial planning only, you'll be quoted a fee for the planning work, and this would be following the initial exploratory meeting, that is the cost of which is absorbed by our firm. And planning and implementation. So personalized planning reports, such as a retirement plan, are included as part of the services that we provide our clients. And we prepare updated plans every 3 years or anytime that clients request it.